Following on from my last video where I briefly spoke about the coronavirus and how I felt I'd managed to avoid contracting the virus myself, even though I was having to self-isolate with someone that had in fact tested positive. As the thumbnail suggests, I was wrong. Turns out I'm not as immune as I was starting to believe I was. So in this video, I'm going to be sharing with you my experience with the virus so far, so you guys know what to look out for in yourselves and those around you. Having this potentially deadly virus can be easily mistaken for something as mild as just a headache or even just having a bad day. Now, the main symptoms of coronavirus, which are known all over the world, are high temperature, a new continuous cough, and a change to your sense of smell or taste. And if you have any of these known symptoms, you must book in for a coronavirus test as soon as possible, and you are by law required to stay at home until you get your results. So if I was to apply these guidelines to my own early onset, it would have been days before I even thought about booking in for a test, let alone booking a test. Now, of course, this wasn't the case for me, as I was already self-isolating due to the missus testing positive, so the chances of me having the virus was actually pretty high, regardless of having symptoms or not. My point here being that if I weren't currently isolating with someone that had tested positive, I would not have booked in for my own test as early on as I did. I'm sure you're aware by now that a new strain of the virus has emerged in the UK, which is spreading more quickly than previous strains, but we don't exactly know how much more infectious it is. This new strain is particularly common in the south of England, which is where I am, so there's a huge possibility that the strain I've contracted is this new strain. With the symptoms that I've been experiencing, I've been thinking, new strain, new symptoms. So let's backtrack a little bit. Friday the 8th, the missus comes home from work. Straight off the bat, she's like, oh, I don't feel right. Got a bit of a headache, had it since yesterday, and I'm starting to get tickly throat. So she checks her temperature, all good, all within range. But the tickly throat, it's a tough answer right there. So she books in for a test for the next day. Her results came back positive 2 days later, by which point she was feeling a bit chesty, slight shortness of breath, minute changes to her sense of smell and taste, but her temperature remained the same. By this point, I'm still feeling right as rain, and I'm starting to think I've either had the virus already or I'm asymptomatic. Either way, 6 more days of self-isolating for me. No. Wednesday the 13th, I wake up with a mild headache, which came with this constant dull ache right behind the eyes, almost as if my eyes were the source of the pain. But I didn't overthink it. I put it down to dehydration. Now, I know a headache is actually a listed coronavirus symptom, but it is way down the list, with no emphasis on it being an initial red flag. Now, this headache gradually got worse as the day went on, to the point where I couldn't even move my eyes around without feeling a significant increase in that throbbing right behind them. Now, the only way I can really describe this discomfort was, imagine your optic nerves are being pulled taut, locking your eyes into like a neutral position, and then moving them around is stretching the nerves, like proper unpleasant. It's just like my eyes were severely hungover, like all the time. Even now, drugged up on paracetamol, I'm very aware that something's not right. Something's missing. I still don't think it's the virus. It's an eye strain, which could also be causing the headache. But I described these symptoms to the missus, and she said that's exactly how she would describe the headache she's been having on and off for the past few days. Right then. So based on that, even though I didn't have any of the initial 3 main symptoms of coronavirus, I booked in for a test anyway, based on the fact that we shared that common symptom, the bad head, and well, she's tested positive herself. So chances are I've got it. So test is booked for the following day. I'm off to bed. I'm starting to feel a bit rough, and I mean really rough, to the point where I can't even open my eyes because my head's hurting that much. Started feeling a bit clammy. Check my temperature, 37.3. Now I'm about 36.6 on a good day, so it's a little bit high, but it's still within range. So I'm in denial. It's an eye strain, probably down to 5 hours of staring at the computer screen earlier that day, scripting the first video. Right, so I barely slept a wink that night. I was too hot, I was freezing cold, I just couldn't seem to regulate my body temperature, kind of like a lizard. By the morning, I was finally convinced that I contracted the virus, with me reading a whopping 38.4. That's the highest temperature I feel I've ever had. Now, I did, however, manage to bring that temperature right back down and keep it down by just having a couple of paracetamol every 4 hours and just drinking plenty of fluids. But that constant dull headache right behind the eyes, it's still there. It's never gone away. It gets a little bit better, and then it just feels a lot worse. It feels worse in the morning when I've just woken up, but that's probably just because I've got no painkillers in my system. As expected, the results from my test came back the next day, and they were positive. Not that that's anything to be happy about, but it does explain the mad high temperature and the really bad head. So I've spoken to a few people now who have tested positive for the virus, asked them about their own symptoms, seeing if the headache is one of them symptoms, and most of them have actually said it is. But not as many have said this is the only symptom they experienced. They had one or two or even all of the three main symptoms, but there have been people that have only experienced this headache while testing positive for the virus. So this is most definitely a new common symptom. Do let me know in the comments below if this is something you might have also experienced. Also let me know if you've got any ideas for me to cover it in future videos. I mean, there's not really a lot I can cover, just things that I've got experience with. So style, hair, fashion, all that kind of stuff. I'll see what I can do. Thanks again for your time and look after yourselves. Peace.